The Committee of the Whole has reconvened, is back from recess. At this time, I'll recognize Senator Frank Blas Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, notwithstanding the House rules, what I'd like to do is thank you to the clerks for being able to transcribe the statement or what was read to us on Monday. I do have a copy of it, but I recognize that other members don't have a copy of this, so I could make a motion that the clerks be allowed to provide a copy to each of the members. It take us into a short recess so that the members can go ahead and digest that statement too, so that we can discuss where we're going to go from there.
So to clarify, this is a motion notwithstanding the House rules to have the clerks share the transcript that you requested in the previous session with the rest of the colleagues and then take a short recess to review it?
Yes, sir.
On that motion, any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. We stand in recess. Okay, we are back from the recess. Everyone has had a chance to receive a copy of the transcript, as was motioned by Senator Blas. I believe everyone's had a chance to review it. I'm going to move along now and go to Senator Terlahi. Senator Terlahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only concern to this bill is that I am not really clear on the changes of this bill that is being introduced right now. I just wanted to know what are the significant changes from the original bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is that a question for Senator Perez? Senator Perez, do you yield to the question?
Yes, thank you for that question, Senator Terlahi. So I'd like to make a motion, notwithstanding House rules, to disperse the current public law. And currently on everybody's desk is the substitute version. Just to, if I can have a moment to get that dispersed and the members to look at it, just to compare the differences. I'll give them a moment to read it, and then I can go over, discuss the differences.
Okay, so this is in response to that question. You would like to disseminate a document that explains what's in the bill?
Yeah, so basically it's what's currently in law, and then what this substitute version has. So it's really, just in short, it's what the should have been in gross bill should have been, and minus that, that amendment that was found materially different. So in addition, there's a repealer clause, so it repeals that public law that was signed for the WAR claims for Bill 130-36. So it repeals that, and so in its place is the bill that should have been engrossed and sent to the governor's desk. So
Okay,
for the body, sorry.
On that motion. On that motion that's notwithstanding the House rules, are there any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll take a short recess while that document is passed out. Okay, we're back from recess. Everyone has received a copy. Senator Terlahi, you still have the floor. Does that suffice? Does that
Mr.
answer your
Chair,
question?
I noticed the changes, and I agree to the changes. On just kind of authorizing the payment for those that did not apply the first time around, so I understand that now.
Okay. Senator Terlahi, any other questions or comments from you? Thank you. Senator Perez, you're recognized. Senator Shelton. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the fact that we're going through this process, but I do want to ask who in the leadership or staff of the legislature can account to us how this transpired and how we got language that was never really included or passed by the floor and passed by this body become law. I think that's still an outstanding question. In order to proceed, certainly for me to have confidence in the operations of the legislature, I need to know how we got here and how are we going to prevent this from happening again. In the history of the legislature, this is not common. I served as legislative secretary for 6 terms and have been here for quite some time, and this is the first time as a member of the legislature I've encountered this happening. I know in the past there were amendments that were not included in a bill that were not, sent on to Adelut, but that was something that was adopted here and I guess forgotten, but to have language that was never authorized on the floor, be incorporated in a bill that subsequently is given to the governor of Guam to sign is a concern. And while some want to minimize it and just say, well, it was a mistake and that's that, it's also the first time I've ever experienced that the legislature, that the senators are being blamed essentially because we somehow did not proofread the bill. It's not a common practice, at least not in my years in the legislature, for the members of the legislature to have the burden of proofreading bills. That's why we have key staff to perform that work. That's why we have the recording secretary. That's why we have legal counsel. That's why it takes $7+ million to operate the Guam Legislature. So I think there needs to be a public accounting, not just to us. Certainly I want to have some confidence moving forward, but I think to our people to make sure that when they do duly elect whoever they choose to elect to represent them, that the actions that are taken on the floor of this legislature and what ultimately is put into language and sent to the governor of Guam indeed is what is intended and what has been authorized by the members of the body. That is, to me, significant. Particularly, it's unfortunate, Mr. Chair, it happened to be on this particular bill. I think we all recognize the sensitivity and concern as to why it happened to this particular piece of legislation, because this is a big issue. I don't think I've experienced anything comparable since the hot dog and chili fight 26 years ago. And a lot of people remember that. But that's how long ago that particular incident happened, those moments of what leads people to remember actions of the legislature. This will be one of them, and it'll be remembered for quite some time. So I want to know, Mr. Chair, who's going to account for this here? I appreciate the efforts by our good senator to read the position of the speaker with regards to this, Senator Sabina, who did that on Monday. But I would like to have who's in charge here to respond to those questions and concerns that we have with how this happened in the first place and what steps are being taken to make sure that we certainly don't have it happen again.
Is that a question for the chair?
Yes, I'd like to know who are we going to have respond to us and to the people publicly? Who's responsible for this?
Is there a motion you'd like to make to have someone?
Well, if I need to, but I also, perhaps you can assist me, who is going to respond? Is it the Committee on Rules? I mean, obviously the speaker's not here to do it. There's hesitancy by the speaker to have any of the staff respond to it, but nevertheless, I mean, these are attaches of the legislature approved by this body. I recall that during the inauguration. So yes, I would like to motion to have, if not, who is left? The Committee on Rules to respond. Someone needs to account in this body what transpired, and I think we need to have the opportunity to ask those questions. This whole process has pretty much stifled our ability to move forward in addressing other pieces of legislation because this, to me, is just such a fundamental concern. That's why we've not been able to move forward, what, now 2 weeks? Going on 2 weeks now. So if it's the Committee on Rules, then I'll motion for the Committee on Rules to provide a response to the body on any questions members of the body may have regarding this situation.
Okay, can you clarify the motion is to have, what is your motion?
I would like to make a motion to have the Committee on Rules chair or acting chair provide a response to the body, or the body, if we have questions, to be able to inquire as to how this situation happened and what steps are being taken to correct it.
Okay, there's a motion to have the Committee on Rules respond to questions. Are you asking the Committee on Rules to chair this committee, or I'm trying to...
No, I mean, you can continue to chair. I think we just need to have someone here in the body that's responsible. I mean, Mr. Chair, everybody's running to want to be in charge and run the show. That's great. But when the time of accounting and responsibility come down, that also comes with the job. You know, we should be able to ask those questions and ask them publicly. That's why we have asked this deliberation to be public, because this is very concerning. The fact that individuals that have not been elected by the people of Guam from legal interpretation can put language in a bill that the governor of Guam signs and then we're told, and the people of Guam are told become law, is very concerning. So I want to know how that happens, because otherwise the rest of us can pack up and go home. However this came about should never have happened. How it happened and why it happened, I think there needs to be an accounting of that. So someone who's in charge here needs to stand up and speak up or be able to respond to questions. These are legitimate questions. Otherwise, we cannot move forward. And I think we want to get this issue resolved. The whole intent behind this bill originally was to address those remaining survivors who had not, because of the one-year deadline, been able to submit their application and address due and just compensation for what they went through and their suffering during the war. We want to move forward with that. But obviously, you see, Mr. Chair, without this concern being addressed, we've not been able to. And I certainly, as well as some of my colleagues, have taken a very strong stand about it because we're very concerned about it. This is not a casual little, oops, we made a mistake. We won't do it again. This is not one of those moments, and I think we need to have a public accounting. That's certainly something me and a number of my colleagues have made very clear for now going on 2 weeks. So I think in order for us as a body to move forward, and move forward with some confidence in this process, somebody here who's somebody needs to answer to it and respond to it or relay what actions have been taken to correct this unfortunate situation that has happened before this body. I don't know how I can articulate it any clearer than that.
Okay, let me take a moment's recess to confer with legal on that motion. Okay, Senator Brown, so is that motion notwithstanding the rules?
Gosh, if we need to notwithstanding the rules, which we use to ad nauseum in this body, sure. I'll say notwithstanding the House rules.
Okay, so there's a motion notwithstanding the House rules to have the Committee on Rules answer to questions.
Well, I assume if Committee on Rules is in charge of the operations here of the legislature, by all means.
So to have Committee on Rules be a member of the panel appear and answer the questions, is that what
I
the?
think that would be helpful, Mr. Chair. I think we all want to
Okay.
move on from this.
All right, on that motion, any objections?
I have a point of information, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So according to our standing rules, attachés under the Guam Legislature, while we are in session, are under the purview of the Speaker of the Legislature. Supervision of these attachés, as well as the engrossment process and the enrollment of bills. So when they hit the floor on the agenda, this all becomes under the purview of the Speaker and is no longer under the Committee on Rules, and neither is the supervision of attachés.
Well, then, Mr. Chairman, then have the acting speaker step forward. Mr. Chairman, I think for the body's sake, I mean, if we don't address this issue, where are we going to be? Because I'm very uncomfortable for us to continue to move on. I mean, we've simply had to move the whole session agenda down to address this because these are still outstanding issues. We talk about accountability and transparency, and then when the time comes, we have all the reasons why we can't do it. And I think we have a right. I think the people of Guam have a bigger right to have these questions answered. I will wait as long as it takes. I have no problem being here. I'm here most of the time, almost all the time.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. If I may,
Yes,
as far as
please.
an acting speaker, we do, because we opened up this, this session to address this bill with a person that was in an acting capacity, so there is an acting speaker.
All right, we'll take a moment's recess. Okay, after discussing with legal, just to clarify some of the questions that were raised, Senator Shelton is not the acting speaker. She's considered the presiding officer over a session that was duly called by the speaker, then recessed by the speaker. But in the speaker's absence, Senator Shelton acted as presiding officer to return from recess. And then it was moved to go into the committee of the whole, and that's where we're at now. So with that, I'd like to recognize you, Senator Brown, on your motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Then I would like to make a motion, notwithstanding our standing rules, that we request the clerk of the legislature, and if necessary legal, only to respond on the procedural process of legislation, of how engrossed bills are moved through the legislature after we vote on those bills in session, so that we can get clarification to this process and hopefully get some sense of confidence moving forward on how this is not going to happen again.
Okay, on that motion, any objections? Any objections on the motion? Seeing none, motion carries.
Can you just repeat the motion? Can you repeat the motion?
One more time, Senator Brown, if you could repeat that motion.
Notwithstanding our standing rules, I would like to request that the clerk of the legislature respond to the procedural issues of legislation after it's passed here in the body. How is it processed through the engrossment process and leaves the legislature for the governor's review and signature, veto, whatever the case may be. We're requesting to have the attachés respond to the procedural issues.
To clarify, so is the request to have the attachés sit on the panel in the committee of the whole to answer questions? Yes?
Okay. Just point of information. So section 11.11G, supervision of attachés. The chairperson of the committee and rules shall be responsible for supervising the attachés of y legislature in Guam. The attachés shall be directed by the speaker when y legislature is in session. So being that the engrossment was not during session, this falls under the purview of committee and rules.
Okay, point of information taken. We have a motion on the floor. Any objections to the motion? There's an objection to the motion. Is that an objection to the motion?
Just to clarify, this is for the clerks to be up there.
Yes, the motion is to have the clerks and attachés sit on the panel to answer questions with regards to this bill.
Yeah.
With regards to the procedures.
Object.
There's an objection. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails.
Can I request a recess, then, Mr. Chair, so we can have our other member join us? Because I have to tell you, if we don't resolve this, I don't see how we can move on. This needs to get resolved.
A moment's recess. We're back from recess. Senator Brown, you still have the floor.
Mr. Chair, a point of information.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, previously we had Senator Brown made a motion that would have the attachés come before the body, and that motion was made and passed, gavelled down by you, Mr. Chair. Then you did gavel down on it, Mr. Chair?
Which the
The
motion for the
to have the
attachés
attachés, yes.
failed. The motion
No,
to
no.
have attachés come before the body failed.
Previously it passed, then a point of information was made by Senator Perez on what the motion was, and then another vote was taken.
That's correct.
That's correct. So previous to that, you had already called for the vote. There was no objection. You gavelled down. So that motion should pass and stand because there was no motion to reconsider the actions of the body.
Point of information taken. Let me confer with the clerks to ensure what exactly transpired
Thank you, Mr.
procedurally.
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Okay, we're back from recess after going over and reviewing the tape or the video of what happened. Senator Atta, you are correct in how it transpired. The chair did gavel in the first motion. Then the chair responded to a point of information, at which time the chair sought another vote on the same motion. Technically, there should have been a motion to reconsider the actions of the body on the first motion. So the first motion stands. We will recess, and Senator Brown's first motion stands. Okay, we are back from recess. Senator Brown, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the fact that we're moving forward on this issue, and I would like to begin if the clerk could provide us an outline of the process and procedures that she goes through on the floor of the legislature with regards to legislation, so that we can find out how we got in the situation in the first place of language being included that was not part of the original bill. I think that would be helpful to start with that first. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Brown. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Senator. Particularly to Bill number 130-36LS. On September 24th, 2021, Bill number 130-36LS was moved to the bottom of the second reading. On September 28th, the members resolved into the Committee of the Whole to begin discussion on Bill number 130, approximately about 3:13. There was a motion to accept substituted version of Bill number 130 with no objection. At 3:16, discussion begins. On that day at 4:47, Committee of the Whole was recessed until 9 a.m. the following day. On September 29, Committee of the Whole reconvened and continued discussion with panel. Actions regarding Bill number 130 as substituted. At 9:45 a.m., floor amendment number 1, sponsored by Speaker Terlahi, proffered to add the words regardless of the time to line 25, page 3 of the bill. At the same time, a technical amendment was proffered by Senator Perez to allow legal corrections to the bill, correcting Public Law, the number 144 to 114. That was passed with no objection. And at the same time, Senator Blas proffered an amendment to amend the word time of death to date of death. With no objection, the floor amendment passed. At 10:36, a point of order was raised by Senator Blas challenging the language, and the chair ruled that the language was materially different. And a motion by Speaker Terlahi to overrule the chair was failed. At 11:40 a.m., a motion with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place Bill number 130LS as substituted and amended in the Committee of the Whole to the third reading file carried with no objection. On 9:30, September 30th, 2020, we began the engrossment process. At 9:02 a.m., all floor amendments proffered were placed in the floor version of Bill number 130-36LS. The floor amendment included FA1, which was the amendment ruled out of order by Speaker, formatted for technical corrections, and at the same time, that version, it's called a floor version, was converted to the working file. In this working file, the clerk's office would usually remove all past withdrawn floor amendments from this process. Actually, I'm sorry, Senators, if you just allow me time to explain how this formatting process happens from inception. When a bill is introduced, officially introduced with the clerk's office initiates the start to format and style of the bill, making sure that grammar or syntax is process in that manner. When that's done, we track all changes and we present them to the Legal Bureau for further corrections or further edits. When a committee report is submitted and a bill is amended or substituted, this process repeats, except in the situation with 130, they moved to accept it on the floor, so the clerks did not have that time, allowed that time to start formatting as we would. And one of the reasons why we do that is so that the engrossment process would be a little bit easier, and we are able to vet through certain things like references or citations are correct. When the bill was substituted, we did initiate the formatting and style until September 30th. And when we created what's called a working process, the floor amendment that was rolled out of order maintained its place there because of a technical to show during this process that there was a technical that was made within that process. After we were done formatting, adding all the maintaining all the past floor amendments, the bill then is sent to our senior clerk staff. And what he does also is vet through this process to ensure that the floor amendments are properly placed there and that the language in the bill is accurate to what was discussed. When that's done, we then prepare a version for the Legal Bureau to review, which is called the working process or the working file. That initiates legal counsels to start making their edits and their changes, and it is a working effort between the clerk's office and Legal Bureau. Once they make their edits, it is given back to my office. The clerks will start initiating those edit changes. Usually, well, typically, right, we do proofread those floor amendments, those edits, and that's what happened with Bill 130. Prior to the engrossment process, we did entertain actions on third reading file. We did vote for 2 measures, which was a resolution. So we were a bit challenged with having to deal with the Bill number 130, and also advised that we were there's a possibility of voting on Monday. When this working effort happen until legal is satisfied, she will sign off with engrossment. When that's done, we will send the engrossment version to the sponsor or co-sponsors to include the oversight committee. When we send the engrossed, it is also to approve and confirm the changes that are there. We receive back, and then we will upload it on the drive for all other members to review. And that was our process with Bill 130 as substituted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senator Brown?
So I just wanted to ask in that process, how did we get inadvertent language that was never passed by the floor to be included in the bill? How did that transact?
That language, that particular floor amendment had a technical, and one of the procedures in the clerk's office is that whenever there's a change, that it is to show, there is a markup version that would show. That language was there to show that there was a technical in that language, but that technical applied to the bill in its entirety.
So how do you distinguish to make sure you don't have language-specific wording that was not authorized or passed by the body to be included in the bill?
Thank you. We track comments. We have a running log of floor amendments, passed, failed. This one was particularly out of order. The floor amendments with the ledger are usually attached to it. When we submit them to the legal bureau, or initially my first review would be the senior staff, they would compare the language that's there. And it wasn't clear and it wasn't questioned at the time, because even myself, when I took a look at the floor amendment, I compared it. And when I noticed that the comment only indicated that there was a technical amendment that was there, my approach with it was that the language regardless time of death was not highlighted nor commented. If there was a comment placed there indicating failed, withdrawn, or out of order, particularly for this one, I would have flagged it and did the corrections, but that was one of the...
So who normally would put that, who normally would have put that language on the document, or so that you would know that because it's a very specific amendment that was made by the speaker that the chairman ruled, substantially different in terms of substance, and did not entertain further with regards to that amendment. So why was that notation not there in this? Because obviously you know that this has added such significant impact. I mean, you couldn't have added more zeros onto this issue that, again, was not, and that's the concern, is how did we get here and how do we not get here again? How is that not noted? Because you guys do something interesting I've never experienced, and this is my 7th term. The previous 6 terms, I've never been called by the clerk of the legislature to confirm any amendment I've ever made on the floor. Normally that is done, and of course maybe a little different because we're electronic these days, but normally that piece of paper comes to me on the floor, and I read it, and I verify yes indeed, and it's normally after it's passed. I'll initial off on it, and it goes back up to the clerk, and that's the official record that I've already confirmed. So I've never been called after the fact while a bill's being engrossed, except this term. And I don't give a lot of amendments, as you've noticed, but so it's unique to me. It registers that I'm being asked to review to verify that that's indeed my amendment. So that's an extra step that you take that I've never experienced before. So how did what action was taken to verify if there was a technical issue, or where did this come from, to go back and find out from the author where did this come from? Because obviously that to me was a significant. I've been asked even after we last session, oh, you guys have included this. I said, no, absolutely not. I was there. It was not entertained and didn't go anywhere. So how is that not registered from your position as the clerk physically in the session hall while these issues are being debated, to have something that's a technical whatever issue being brought up and not have clarity to it, realizing that it had significant impact on the whole content of the bill itself?
Thank you. So I do have a staff member that works on inputting all floor amendments discussed on the floor. And then it transitions to another staff member that works up what we call, again, the working version. As far as the floor amendment, it was placed where it should be, and then when it transitioned, the comment that was left there was specific to a technical. So the focus was that language was there. As far as the proofreading of the language that was there was somewhat of an oversight.
So what was the technical word? I mean, ultimately, who's in charge? Who ultimately determines what language goes in the bill? I mean, you could have several staff under you, but who ultimately is supposed to be up here during session keeping track of what transpires and what's added, what's amended, what's withdrawn? Who's in charge of doing that?
It's a working process for everyone. We have our checklist, or checks and balances, that's in there. Once a floor amendment is placed there, the amendment we would know her as an amendment clerk, or the individual as an amendment clerk. She places that in. When that language is there, then we have staff member. We print out the bill with the floor amendment, And then we have staff members proofread what's there.
But I understand, but then who ultimately is keeping track of what transpires during session? Somebody's got to have order to what is happening. I mean, any one of us can make an amendment to a bill, add, amend, change, whatever the case may be, but somebody here has to be tracking all of that. Are you telling me it goes from one person to another, and
It usually,
how would you get caught at your level to determine? Because you're telling me a technical, but that's a big technical error. That's why I'm not clear with that. Who ultimately is tracking what transpires during session?
that would be myself, and the procedures itself allows you to cross-check. Like if one floor amendment's missed or is misplaced or needs to be there, there's a next step that allows you to cross-check from comparing floor amendments passed, the ledger, a working markup that would allow you to do those cross-checks. In this particular process, timing was a lot of to the essence, because I only have one staff member who works on the floor version and then the other on the working. This process was not just by myself or the individuals in this working process, but as soon as we were done with these floor amendments, we've met those procedures with an oversight of that one particular, it was a paragraph language that was there, that was placed there. And that was the big oversight on my office that we.
Senator Brown, if I may chime in a bit, I want to clarify a little bit. I think what you're mentioning when you say technical, you're talking about there's a comment that's on the working document, right? It's like a Word document, and there's a comment on it that says make technical amendments. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Make technical corrections. So often when we make motions and we make amendments, we'll throw in something, and for legal to make technical corrections or something to that effect.
That's
right?
correct.
So that comment that was in there threw someone off in the process, right? They thought that that amendment was the technical amendment that was supposed to go in. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
So I just wanted to explain, because
It was placed there inadvertently to indicate that there was a motion made on the floor that allows legal to make a technical correction. When that was placed there, moving along to the next individual didn't realize that that language was not supposed to be there.
I understand, but again, I mean, who ultimately has to make that determination of what transpires on the floor? Because again, in the history of the legislature, this is very unusual. You know, we've had other clerks that have sat in this position. I understand, Mr. Chair, but I just want to point that out, and I can't, well, because 2 or 3 other people are looking at it and they didn't know. I mean, we can't be uninformed, especially if that's our key job, because I'm a little concerned now I'm being asked to be a proofreader. And unfortunately, probably for the rest of this term, I'm going to have to be for my own sense of comfort, which is totally unnecessary because it's not, in the history of the legislature, the normal process, even though I see public statements being made that every senator missed this. I mean, we have key people here. That is the main job that they're supposed to perform. So if that slips through, if this was a little technical mistake, it had some substantial impact to the whole intent of the bill that has caused a lot of upheaval, particularly because of the subject matter and the impact of what this represents, and more importantly, because it's not language that was ever authorized by the body. So I just want to relay that, Mr. Chair, because that's very concerning, and then I'm sure after our other colleagues perhaps have questions, maybe the next round can be what is being done to correct moving forward so that we don't end up in this situation of this being reviewed from one to the other, and then we end up with something that's totally unauthorized by the body. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Atta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the attachés for being here this afternoon. And just for the general public's understanding of why we're here in the committee of the whole with the attachés, is that there was a technical error that was made in the bill that was transmitted up to the governor, that the governor had signed into law. Now, the issue is we don't want the general public to think that we are repealing a section of law that legally passed this body, and that we are just, this bill that is going through now is the same substituted bill that was passed without that technical error that was made in the bill. Am I correct?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we had that clear for the general public's understanding. You were mentioning to Senator Brown about the process and proofreading and things like that. And in our latest version of the Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure, which was 2020, on section 702, it says, the enrolled bill of the final version of a bill in the form passed by both houses, which has been proofread and corrected, usually under the direction of the chief legislative officers, and printed with the blanks for the certification of passage and accuracy and signature by the governor. This bill is certified by the presiding officers and legal legislative officers of both houses as being correct and having duly passed both houses and sent by messenger to the governor's office for consideration and approval. So my question is there something that we need to add to this section in our standing rules that says we need to be the ones now to proofread the bills prior to being communicated to the governor's office for passage or for signage? I mean, what is your, I want to make sure that what we're doing doesn't, what had happened does not get repeated. And do you believe that we now, as legislators, need to do what the chief legal officers and the officers that are assigned to do these things need assistance from the legislators to ensure that there's accuracy and the bills were proofread?
Thank you, Senator, by the way, for the question. Yes, there will be extensive checklists to the process as far as the cross-checks, proofreading, check-off, signature. When I created the SOPs for the digital platform of the legislature, one of the process was to upload it on the website to have all members view the document. But when the document is presented to the members and once it is passed, in the clerk's office, we try not to make any other edits, or if there is something concerning, usually it's addressed on the floor. And with this process, I've been maintaining it as far as once we are done with the voting and it's passed, that the only thing we would need to do is just add the members and transmit it. After the bill has been, after we create the working version and it elevates to what's called the legal working version, that document now goes to legal counsel, and between the process of legal counsel up until the time it's engrossment, the clerk's office will not edit or try to make any other corrections to the document. And if there is a question regarding the language or regarding the process, it would usually be brought up to my attention, and the same, I would bring it to legal. We appreciate that the procedures at place, but more so now, we will embrace each and every step of it. the clerk's office is we try to be as efficient as we can if time permitted, but in some circumstances it's quite difficult. And in situations like that, one or two things we do: we either ask for a little bit more time, or we just ask for, or we notify that we will need help in this process.
Well, thank you, Madam Clerk. So then, you mentioned the procedure. So then, do you believe then that hard copy of all engrossed bills should be given to each member of this body prior to voting on it on the day of voting? I mean, I understand that we were in the technology, technology that we have in front of us with our computers and being uploaded, but half the time, as you know, our internet goes down, or the bills are not loaded, and things like that. And I believe that, COVID-19 had also played a part in that, in being paperless. But do you feel that engrossed versions prior to voting should be hard copied on each member's desk?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I do. I do believe, but it's a transition process for everyone. Unfortunately, we were forced to transition to a digital platform in this process, but when we work with the hard copy before us, it's a little bit clearer for most members, and some members are efficient enough to handle the digital platform of it. But the hard copies usually provide you also a hands-on or a practical sense of the discussion at hand.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. And I think perhaps maybe what we can do as a legislative body is maybe those members that would prefer the hard copy be provided a hard copy, and those that just are fine with the digital platform, then we can do that, Mr. Chair, and that's probably something that we can also look at. But thank you to our attachés for being here again. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The statement was made that sometimes you would ask for a little more time earlier in your statement. Were you at the position in this situation? Did you ask for a little more time?
When we are, as attachés, when we're asked to prepare for actions that may happen with the body, we will ask for the additional time. Did we ask? We were told that we were going to act on the bills that was Monday. And we did try to compromise, not compromise, we were trying to accommodate the time, accommodate requests in that time, but we were told that we were going to act on the bills on Monday. We were still in active discussion in Committee of the Whole at the same time that we were engrossing and trying to engross. So it was a little bit challenging for legal and myself to accommodate the request.
If I understand what you're saying, during your conversation as committee as a whole, that conversation did come up requesting, and however you may have put it, for additional time. And that question or that comment is made to, who do you ask for additional time to? Who would give you that if the request was made? Who answers that for you?
I'm sorry. At this particular time, we were in committee of the whole, and we were asked with the oversight chair, and he asked us if we were able to complete engrossment by that particular time. We advised him that we would need a little bit more time, and that if there was a time to allow us, and then we were also advised by the speaker that we will be voting on Monday.
So your request for additional time was denied?
It was a back and forth conversation with timing to an extent to a certain day or at a certain time, but we were told that we will be voting it that evening of Monday.
Understood. And the reason you made the request for additional time was you wanted to ensure things were done correctly, right? Not being, like, would rush be the correct word? You needed more time to adequately do your job, if that's what I'm understanding.
We would like and appreciate that we're allotted a specific time. We try as much to do 24 or 48 hours of engrossment time period. But this, in light of this case, we actually worked on Bill 130 on a Sunday when we were engrossing it. And prior to that, like I said, we entertained actions on a bill and a resolution. And during that time, we were still in discussion in committee of the whole, and we were again engrossing with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Duenas.
Sidus Mansi, Mr. Chairman. I think at this point I'm clear on the chain of custody and events. I think I'll move to ask a question that we'll be proceeding on going forward. And to be clear with legal, I'm not going to ask anything about any legal implications of the bill or where we're at, but I'm going to ask because there has been a public statement made by the administration in terms of the potential fix. I do feel comfortable with the bill that's been presented, but I want to put it on the record that you believe Substitute Bill 217 will be adequate to repeal the current public law and our actions taken going forward.
As drafted, the way that Bill 217 as substituted, the version that is drafted, we think would be sufficient to repeal the public law 3659.
And notwithstanding any potential amendments, I've reviewed it, but I'm asking this on the record, it would be an exact version of what should have been voted on, minus the language, the problematic language that we're currently entertaining.
If you go line by line, there are some differences as you refer to the repeal in the title. Section 1 of the bill also contains that repealing language. I believe if you look carefully at the text throughout, there are a few technical changes in there. But substantively, yes, the bill as substituted reflects what would have been engrossed and passed in Bill 130 without the language that is at issue here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify once again, I was specific to not including the repealer. Of course, I know that that language would be different, because obviously it's necessary. So I'm quite satisfied with that answer, and look forward to debating that bill. I may have a procedural question in the second round, but thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to just Masi.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate, Renee, your explanation of the timeline of the engrossment or the action on Bill 130. I think it helps to have people understand where the error of the language was inadvertently put in and inadvertently kept in there when it should have been taken out. So I appreciate that. And I believe that you have demonstrated, and your staff, that there is a process and everybody goes back and forth. But where there are situations where you're pressed to finish something, oftentimes haste can make waste, right? The risk of error occurs when you're rushed. And you had mentioned that in this situation, you were a bit under a timeline, and perhaps we weren't all looking. But I just want to comment that I don't see necessarily the need for us to believe that we all need to be proofreaders of all the bills, because I believe that the process and the way that it should occur has been in place, and for the most part, it works. But I do want to point out also that in the tier of authority, yes, we all have a hand in it. Those of us who proffer amendments are routinely asked to look at the engrossed bills to ensure that the amendment as we proffered is in fact the amendment that we put through in the final form of the bill. So I know that those levels of checks happen with the authors of amendments and the like. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our standing rules also call for what the procedure is with regard to engrossing bills before passage. And it's very clear here in our rules under 6.04D6 that the engrossing of bills before passage, ultimately, the authentication of it really rests at the head of our legislature. It's clear here that the any bill, and I'm reading from 6104D6, any bill on third reading file found to be incorrectly engrossed as determined by the Speaker shall be automatically referred to second reading, but only for purposes of correcting the engrossment. So ultimately, if we seem to be focused on who is responsible. And from what I see in our standing rules in terms of who's responsible for supervising you and directing you and the attachés, who is responsible ultimately for the engrossing of bills, for authenticating bills, there is one answer per our standing rules. And I mention this because I feel that, I somewhat feel for you in the situation. We sometimes get pushed against the wall and have to perform. And when we're rushed to do things, all good intentions, mistakes happen, even for the best intended. And it's because we don't have that luxury of scrubbing and going back and forth. If in fact this body was asked to vote on a measure, and it was done in the evening, this bill was voted on after hours, right? After working hours. Yeah, so that in and of itself shows that it was not an ordinary type of process in terms of voting. It was rushed and so I bring that up because I believe it's necessary to, in your defense, it's necessary to point out that there were unusual circumstances with regard to the handling and the voting on this bill. And that, you know, I do give that to all of you, because it's only fair that where mistakes happen, where situations are not ordinary, that mistakes can happen. But I think, though, that if we really wanted to hang someone on this, and I use that figuratively, our standing rules really call for who is responsible. And it all falls on to, really per our standing rules, who is that last signature on here, to determine if there was an error in engrossment and to authenticate it going forward. So I just want to point that out. But I think this is a lesson for us too when it comes to efficiency, that we do try to keep things within normal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just fix this real quick. I share the same sentiments as the previous speaker. It appears that there has been, you've asked for more time, and you stated that you were given till Monday even though you asked for more time. And so it does seem that this issue was rushed. And so in the future, there is a mention of there are mitigations put in place now to ensure that this will not happen again. What are those mitigations that are being put in place?
For the clerk's office, we're going to readjust a bit of the SOPs where the focus, especially in the engrossment part, is to process only the past floor amendments, extensive proofreading, cross-checks with 3 individuals, at least in the staff members, and to ensure cross-checks with the floor amendments and its ledger.
Okay, and then what about the recommendations as far as time? Because you stated earlier with one of the previous, with one of my previous colleagues, is that you asked for more time, but there was an insistent date that was given to you that you had to finish by. How do we mitigate this unusual circumstance for when you are being encouraged to finish at a certain timeline, even though you have challenges that you have to meet to ensure that this is done effectively, efficiently, and correctly?
Thank you for that, Senator. It depends on the actions of the body, the discussion that goes on, dialogue. Floor amendments is another issue that requires time to vet carefully the cross-checks. When it comes, it depends on the discussion of each measure and the conversation that takes place. One bill could be with no floor amendments, but still we have some technical issues that legal will question or that we would see, or sometimes it's as simple as a one floor amendment. So there's a give and take, but my understanding is legal and I would request at least 24 to 48 hours of engrossment time to ensure that what items are placed on the session agenda, what's moved to the third reading or voting, that we are allowed to at least 24 to 48 hours of engrossment time.
Okay, and I hope that you include in your SOPs that if you should need more time, that you don't just speak to one member of the body or 2 members of the body. You write a formal memo saying you need more time for engrossment. Because if you're being rushed and we make these kind of mistakes again, it doesn't fix anything. So it would behoove us to make sure that the whole body is aware that you're being backed against the wall to be rushed to push out legislation so that you can vote in a certain time to meet someone's timeline. But we don't want to make these mistakes again, so I hope that you include in your SOP that the clerk will write a memorandum to all members of the body requesting more time and recommending the time and date that you will be able to finish by so that we can come back for voting confident and sure and certain that these bills that are engrossed are accurate and true. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. This is the end of round one. So for round two, I'm actually going to start with the middle row because we started with the back row for round one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just haven't been able to ask for anything at this point, so.
No, the last session we were
Right.
in, you gave your time to Senator Brown.
Brown, right.
And that's because we began this committee of the whole on your row with you. You yielded your time to Senator Brown, then we went to Senator Bloss, then we recessed, and then we reconvened today with Senator Bloss, and then the back row.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, you didn't allow her the full 5 minutes of my time.
Yes. I checked, according to the clerks, they said she was given a full 10 minutes. Yes. I double checked. I reminded and I said that her time was yielded. So she was given her full time. So we will go now to the middle row. Senator Perez, you're recognized. Again, this is for the second round of questions. Yes, we're on the second round, and then there'll be a third round that will allow for amendments and final comments, etc. Okay. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
So just a question, Mr. Chair. So last time we invited DRT and DOA. Are we going to include them in the committee of the whole for the second round?
Well, there was a motion to have the attachés here for this round and to answer questions, so.
So does that mean we're going to extend it to inviting the ones that originally were invited?
Is there a motion to, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I just want clarification on the rounds, because if this round is specifically for Committee on Rules or clerks, is this in addition to what was originally planned?
No, there's 3 rounds, that's it.
3 rounds, okay. So, yeah, I'm thinking that, to get the answers, I mean, I know we're focused on the process itself, but I think there's the bigger issue of the bill, right? Which is what I guess is part of the committee of the whole. What the purpose of the committee of the whole is to, get more information regarding, cost or what revenues are there. I know we had a committee of the whole previously, but time has passed since. So if this is going to be our last round of question, then I think it behooves us to have that updates.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
You're recognized, Senator Bloss, on a point
Mr.
of
Chair,
information.
the bill before us is to repeal a certain act, a certain section. Okay? It's under the understanding that as a result of doing that we're just repealing certain language in the bill that doesn't necessarily touch the appropriations of the bill or the money section of the bill. So I don't see the need to be able to have revenue and tax or DOA come before this body. That had already been deliberated previously, okay, in the previous bill, which is what this legislation, this bill is just to correct a certain portion of that bill that wasn't supposed, language that wasn't supposed to be in that bill.
Point
Senator
of information.
Perez, go ahead.
Yeah, point of information. We did have public hearings since and new bills have been introduced that would affect the revenue source. So I think that's important to get information on. So I would like to make the motion to recess to get those staff to be here to
I object.
Present.
Okay, clarify your motion first.
So
You are
I would
making
like
a motion to recess?
Recess so that we can call, if this is going to be our last round of question, the revenue
Yes.
that's going to support the implementation of this bill. I think we need clarity on that
Okay.
in the spirit of transparency and accountability.
The motion, again, I need to clarify the motion because non-clarity of motions is what got us into this mess in the first place. So the motion is to recess until what?
Until we can get BBMR, DOA, DRT to be able to answer questions.
Thank you. There is a motion to recess until we can bring in DOA, DRT, and BBMR, correct? Okay. Any objection to the motion?
Object.
There's an objection. All those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Okay, I think that, is it possible to get back to me? Can I just regroup?
I'm sorry, what was that
Yeah,
again?
I'd just like to make a request to be at the bottom of the questioning. I just need to regroup right now. So instead of me being first, can I go at the end?
Yeah. Okay, let me, your request is to move along and then come back to you later, is that correct?
Yes, and to be at the bottom too. as
Okay,
well.
if you can make that in a motion.
Yeah, plus, yeah, I am the mover of the bill itself, so I think I do have that reservation.
On the
in place.
final round, you have the ability to go last and close on it, that's correct. But we're on the second round. So if you'd like to make a motion for us to go past you and come back to you at the end of the second round, you may make that motion.
Yeah, so does it require a motion or just a request from the chair? Is that a need of a motion?
I'm requiring a motion.
Okay, so I'd like to make the motion to be placed at the bottom of the questioning for the second round.
There's a motion that Senator Perez go last on the second round. Although, any objection to the motion? There's an objection to the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Okay. I think I think everybody's here. I think it's so important that we take corrective action and I think it's very clear about, where the mistake occurred. I think what the public really would like to see is that, we don't, the mistake doesn't recur. And, for me, I see this as a systemic issue. It's not just one person that is responsible. I think we are all culpable in this process. We are ultimately, especially as senators, we are ultimately responsible for putting our name to legislation. And that is my perspective. And I think the more that we can see this as a collective mistake, I think the more chances are that this problem would not recur. And, I think in looking back, it seems that there were all these fail-safes that should have been in place, and for some reason, it failed. And I think the more that we can acknowledge that, the quicker that we can to come to a resolution. I think I also want to maybe bring out a point that, this body has worked hard to take corrective action in a short amount of time once the error was caught. I think in comparison to the content of this bill, We talk about war reparations and how it took 77 years for Congress to act on something, for that is the foundation of our society here. We owe everything. We owe everything to our ancestors that survived the war. And I know this bill only partially acknowledges that. And, I feel that process is important. Yes, we need to abide by our governance structures. But at the same time, the job is undone. It's not completed. We're coming upon, another world conflict. And we've yet to resolve something as deep as this for the healing of our people. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. We shouldn't lose sight of that. This war reparations, we need to address the larger group. And I think, with this exercise in fixing, doing corrective action, I think it is a humbling experience. But I think, it's important to recognize mistakes and work past them and make sure that they don't, recur. I think that's really the bottom line, but I think the bigger issue is reparations for our people. And I know there's other legislation in the horizon, and we should not give up. I know there's so many movements that have to happen for justice for our island. Whether it's decolonization, whether it's, I think war reparations is a big part of it. And I think it's really sad to see that it is coming out of our own coffers. This should have been dealt with many years ago. And it's unfortunate that we, as a people, have to do it ourselves. Yeah, it's a sad experience. But I think that's part of our resiliency. We're willing to move ahead despite the lack of resources, despite the lack of acknowledgement, despite the lack of justice. And I think that's what we should be proud of as a people. We're not going to give up. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Shelton. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to find moving forward, you did elaborate a bit, but again, I'm a little concerned about documents going from one to the other and disconnect between the parties that are involved in the finalizing of legislation that's been addressed on the floor. Moving forward, what do you recommend changes, or what changes do we need to do or can expect from the clerk's office and legal so that we don't end up in this situation again? Because, I have no control over how and when we vote. Most members here, I don't know who gets to decide that. I certainly don't. I'm simply directed also and told, this is a time you have to show up to vote. And I recall the evening that we did vote, we were here for a couple hours. We were here at 7. We didn't vote till a couple hours later. And then we, of course, were here at 7:30 in the morning, I believe, for the state funeral that we had to attend. I certainly feel for the staff that was here late that evening having to reconfigure the session hall to accommodate that, but that's not something I have control over in the legislature, and I don't direct any staff except my very own in my own little office. So I don't necessarily agree that, we're all responsible, because I don't have any administrative control over the staff at the Guam Legislature in my current capacity. But I would like to know, though, moving forward, how is this mistake going to be addressed so that we and the public, more importantly, has some confidence that when they do elect their representatives, that actions that take place on this floor, what's determined on this floor, is ultimately 100% reflected in the language and the legislation that's put in paper that's transmitted to Adelup, because there's such a process in that. We can't take for granted the custody of that document once it leaves here, how it gets there, how it's accounted for, depending on whatever action the governor takes, and how it gets returned. I mean, I'd have Guam police at my house 11, 12 o'clock at night to deliver bills that were, signed, vetoed, or whatever the case may be by the administration to ensure that they met that clock requirement and publicly account for what action, because it does become time sensitive once it leaves here. So I think we know the importance of all of that. But moving forward, what has been contemplated, I'm sure, in these last couple of weeks, and I'm sure for you in particular, and also legal, it's not been pleasant, because this does not reflect well upon the legislature. So I'm sure you've thought about it. What are we going to do differently moving forward here so we don't end up in this situation again? And that we have some comfort. There's actually somebody here that's actually keeping track of all the collective actions of this body, and that it's reflected in the bill that's transmitted from the legislature to the governor of Guam.
Definitely the recommendation that if the clerks and legal needed the extended time, that a memo would be produced. As far as the procedures of checks and balance, that we, that we have staff members, maybe additional staff members to assist in this process. When it comes to timing, it always circumvents back to timing, allowing time that we are certain, the clerk's office as well as legal, that we are certain that we've met time needed to go through each process, whether it was no floor amendments proffered or passed, or just moved to the third reading without any changes or amendments. We definitely will be cognizant about the actions that are placed on each measure. But again, it's just making sure that we have a needed time to go through each item.
Saying that the main issue here was the lack of time? You're not giving adequate, it's not the first time we're doing a bill. Is it in this particular case you weren't given adequate time to complete your task?
In this particular session, it was it was quite challenging. Not only did we have we had bills that we were working through session, but we were also preparing for upcoming sessions, the state memorials that were called. But it was the timing, like I mentioned, we came in here on Sunday to go through what we could. We were still in discussion with 2 more items, and though we were still in discussion in one particular and heading to the next. And with that particular session, timing was a challenge for us.
Well, I certainly hope that can be addressed, because again, most members of this body, we have no control over that or oversight over what time you're granted to review anything. We're also told as we leave session what time we're requested to return back for voting, and even if we have to wait, there's many times we're sitting here waiting in the session hall. So it's not anything I in particular have control over, but I certainly appreciate the fact that you're noting that for the record. And I do concur with the comment that was made by my colleague, Senator Atta. Sometimes getting back to the basics actually work, a little pen and paper. And I certainly would request in the future, especially because sometimes we're voting after hours, otherwise I get my staff to produce it, my one staffer, that we do get hard copies provided to us so that we have that opportunity to look. It's very difficult, unless I get another computer, to cross my screen and make sure I'm looking at a bill, I'm looking at an amendment, whatever the case may be. It's wonderful, the technology that we have. But if it doesn't get us to our desired outcome, then what's the use of it? For us, certainly from our standpoint, at least from mine in particular, I think it would be very helpful to have those bills when they're reviewing them at what is supposedly their final engrossment before voting, that we have it on the floor so that we can also take the time to read it and know what's actually there. But again, I would have to defer to whoever your supervisor is that directs your time to relay that concern that you feel you didn't get adequate time to address these issues. But in the future, I'm sure and hopeful that collectively the staff will be very careful with how they handle this to make sure, and especially you as a clerk of the legislature, have a collective understanding at all times of every bill, of everything that transacts on it, because ultimately for you in your capacity, somebody has to be the one overseeing your staff to make sure that their actions are indeed what transpired. Somebody has to be keeping track of what we're doing. I mean, our job is to come in here and deliberate the issues and the bills. You know, I'll add proofreader for my job if I need to do it. I'll put it on my resume. But that, again, traditionally, that's not been required of the legislature. That's never been an issue where we've questioned, and I've never questioned the clerk of the legislature in my time with regards to the final engrossment of a bill. With that, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions and provide my comments.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Atta.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Senator Terlahi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the staff that's answering our questions and sitting here and doing everything you can to tell us what happened. I appreciate it. Renee, how long have you been doing this kind of work with the legislature?
14 years.
14 years.
Yes, I've served as clerk for 8.
14, okay. Are you confident that this will not happen again?
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you asked for more help or more staff from Committee on Rules, or do you have enough staff right now?
The clerk's office is kind of unique. You can fill, but the understanding of process and procedure of the legislature could be most challenging. I've been provided with really good staff that is open to learning new process, the procedures of the legislature. Mm-hmm. Yes, I have asked for staff and they've accommodated when needed. And if not, then Committee on Rules will also try to arrange staff to assist.
But the people that are under you are from the Committee on Rules, are hired by Committee on Rules, correct?
No, it is recommended positions by the majority members.
Okay. But most likely it's from that oversight.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and you have asked for more staff to help you with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You know, I want to thank the speaker actually for actually taking, stepping up and taking the blame for all of us, with her announcements, her press releases. And I also like to wish her a speedy recovery too as well. We talk about rushing before this, like other members from our own body, kind of pushing that same rushing method through in this legislature. I mean, look at us now. We've got a stop clock in front of us as we debate and talk about legislation, laws that are going to change the people's lives on this island. And here we are under a time frame to do it. Rush, 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 hurry through before the 5 minutes is up. Talk about rushing. I think everyone here is to blame with that. I mean, it's hard enough that the speaker accommodates for everybody because they have an appointment they have to go to, so please let's vote this day, or I've got a scheduled public hearing, so can you rush it? It's very difficult. I think now there's not going to be any accommodations for anybody because of what happened here today. And I feel confident what you said, Renee, that this won't happen again. I'm pretty sure you've got extra measures in place. One of the things I've always relied on is that when the bill has been completed and engrossed, it's sent to the author of the legislation. And the author looks it over and gives you a green thumbs up saying it's ready to go, green light. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think you received that from the author of the legislation. They failed in that perspective. I think we all learned our lesson here. And I hope that moving forward, we can all help each other out and assist each other when needed. and help maybe even catch each other's mistakes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Titlehi. Senator Blas.
Mr. Chair, recognizing that there is actually supposed to be a virtual public hearing on a very substantive resolution, I request that we go ahead and recess until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
There's a motion. Is that a motion to recess until 10 o'clock tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
There's a motion to recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Are there any objections?
Can I have my say-so first, Mr. Chair?
So is that an objection to the motion to recess?
I object for now until I have my turn to speak.
So that counts as an objection then. There's an objection to the motion. All those in favor of the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, when 30 seconds, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, there has been a motion, there's an objection to the motion,
Yeah, you're
so we
correct.
need to follow through with
Okay.
the motion.
Point of order taken. You're correct. There's a motion. There's been an objection. All those in favor of the motion to recess signify by raising your hand. All those in favor of the motion to recess until tomorrow at 10 a.m. signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Blas, you're recognized.
In the interest of time, sir, so that we can allow Senator Piro and then come back to me later.
Senator Terlahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Mr. Chair, I claim that I am not an expert in sound write-ups. But this morning when the legal counsel showed me, because I didn't understand what was going on Bill 217 and then going to Bill 130. And I am not in the position to do a blame game on this one. I think the problem here, when I look at 217 and the correction on 130, I think it's a matter of, lacking deliberation. And I am not going to blame the clerk for not coming out and seeing the mistake, because it is not a mistake. It is just a mindset of who was writing the bill. And that is why, Mr. Chair, I think that, when we voted on 217, I think it was lacking the deliberation that we needed to do. Because there's no mistake on 217. It wasn't included on the write-up that we need to include those that fail to apply for the war reparation. So there's no way of us really, even if we give the clerk so many hours to review the bill, I don't think she would come out with the right decision. And Bill 130 is just an addendum to Bill 117. So I am not going to put the blame on the clerk, but I will put the blame on all of us here for not deliberating to the max to come out with the right decision on introducing Bill 217. Thank you very much, and can I make a motion also, Mr. Chair? That
Sure.
we recess until 10 o'clock tomorrow?
There is a motion to recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Are there any objections to the motion?
I'd like to amend the motion to 1 o'clock, 1300, tomorrow.
There's been an amendment to the motion to recess until 1 o'clock tomorrow. Any objections to the amendment to the motion, to the main motion? There's an objection to the amendment to the original motion. All those in favor to the amendment, please signify by raising your hands. Yes. The motion on the floor now is a motion to reset, is a amendment to the original motion, which is to recess until 1 tomorrow. On that motion to recess until 1 tomorrow, there's been an objection. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wait. Motion carries. So we are in recess until tomorrow at 1 p.m.